A collaborative exhibition entitled Drawing on the Art of Children, an historical perspective of children's art in the 20th century, was held in Sydney in 1997 and in Melbourne the following year. This exhibition raised questions about the role of art in children's lives and in the lives of adults. The exhibition included children's art collected by Francis Derham in the 1940s and 50s and celebrated the fact that children's art has the power to connect adults with their past. It also drew attention to some of the reasons for preserving and exhibiting children's art.
Art is a whole life thing. You just use your head to imagine things and then you put it together and it comes out as art.
But I'm curious about the way it serves us and that we can have it and we can enjoy it and we can learn from it. And I know that there's so many painters who just treasure it and to see it and they go back to their canvases or back to their studios sort of refreshed, and it always provides this beautiful vitamin, this mineral that's missing in our diet, and I think it's just it is a great vitamin deficiency which this society has at the moment, and that is children's art.
All I do is just think of the thing to do and feel what I want, really feel like what I really want to do, so I just do it.
I've always been touched in a newspaper office to see some poor fella in a suit, bent over his workstation, glaring into a computer, and above on the wall is some beautiful, free, spontaneous finger painting, you see. That his child, who is, yet free, who is still free. And of course, the great question, a very important question, which must be addressed in all this, I think, by those who study it, is why, for heaven's sake, does it stop? Why does this children's painting stop? And why does it have to stop? Why are adults so reluctant to draw, or so nervous to draw? There seems to be some point, and I don't know about what that age is, but it seems to dry up and stop and become terribly inhibited.
Obviously changed from being free to constrained very early in life, because if you see there's a very strong pencil line.
Yes, I noticed the outlines.
Yes, and so obviously cut.
And how old were you then?
I was 8.
Yes, oh, well, that's about right for age.
Yes, but lost the freedom very early on, I would have thought. Yes.
I remember when I was 8 or 9, being asked to a still life painting, still life drawing, and being given a flower, and I could never ever draw a flower that the teacher thought was a true representation of what was put in front of me. Everything I drew always failed, never accepted, and always came back with big red marks and try again and do better. And so that in the end, to help me pass the exams, so that the teacher could get 100% pass amongst the students, she actually drew for me and told me to go home and practice it. And at the exam to reproduce it, which is what I did, and I passed. Yes. And it was a very painful experience. It was so painful that art became a really torturous, painful subject.
I'm taken back to a time, just as you were emotionally last night, to a time when I was in grade 2 and I did a painting, and it was a sort of portrait, and the teacher recognised it to be a good work or whatever, and I was instructed to go over to the principal of the school and show him, who pinned it up in his office for a day or something like that. But I think it extraordinary that I remember that event, and it comes back to me all the time about the recognition of children's art and where that spark of a lifetime commitment, be it as a practising artist or be it as these children this morning were, just open-minded to soak it all in like a sponge and make their own decisions. They're the really important things I think that exhibitions like this and commitments to this art form is really about.
I could have painted this picture when I was 7 or 8. I drew people exactly like this, same triangular shape, and this idea about the legs being continued under the table and the little desk. I mean, this is just immensely familiar to me. I mean, I could just imagine myself doing something like that. Whereas some of the other works in the exhibition, I don't think I, as a child, would have produced anything as glorious as this one. This has got such a wonderful feeling of composition about it. It's absolutely fantastic painting. I love it.
I wish I could do it again like that. And I sit with young Felix, my 3-year-old, and they're, you know, I feel, well, it's putting too hard a thing on it, but I feel rather sort of cramped and sad about what happened to my drawing. I can't remember my drawing at that stage. So what happens to it, I don't know, and how do we get it back? Well, we never do. Perhaps it just belongs to childhood. But we can celebrate it now. We can hold these talismans up, these memories, and we can provide for the making of it. The tactile materials, you know, close down that terrible computer if it, you know, as much as possible, and give them a stick with a bit of pigment on the end of it and a bit of animal hair, which is a brush, and some colour and material, and to watch children enjoying material, you know, and substance. This is a beautiful thing. There was something else I wanted to say, but I guess it's like a child just leaving, you know, the eyes out or something. It doesn't matter, perhaps.
It's interesting, but I don't call it a sadness. Isn't it crazy? I mean, I see it as a time of great joy, and the fact, like we said before, that it's a time that you move on. It's like adolescence, like any period of life that you move through, and that's what this is about, is the appreciation of that time, not a sort of regretful thing that it can't stay with you.
Linked with that is the impetus for growth and development. As children are engrossed in their investigation of art making during early childhood, the impetus to move on is clearly evident in their painting and drawing. They're exploring and growing further. Art making is a significant means of growth.
I think art is something very special that you make. I think art is a special kind of thing for people to look at when it's finished.
I think the exhibition makes that point. It actually suggests something. It suggested a dimension that I think was neglected in those days, which is, what do children themselves make of their own art? How do they understand what they're doing? And how do they understand the work of their own contemporaries? How do they understand, how do they look at and understand the work that other children are doing?
Well, my son who's nearly 7, he and his friends every day, they sit down with drawing boards and black and red pencils mainly, and they're drawing this huge collection of aliens and rockets and spaceships and volcanoes and caves and great swarms of spaceships crossing the sky. And it's an incredibly social process, because they're all talking to each other all the time about who's produced a new type of guy, they call them. Have you seen my new guy I've done today? He's called blah, 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 you know, he does this, that and the other. He has these properties and qualities. And they're all in it together, and some of them have collaborated on great books. You know, they're in the 5th exercise book filled with these creatures. And it's an amazing thing.
Affected the way you work with your own son now with art and art materials? Have you got a totally different attitude to it now? Do you feel happy about providing him with art materials and encouraging his art making?
Yes, in fact, I think he is the hope, the savior in a sense of how I feel about how I grew up with art. I provide him with what materials, and sometimes he indicates what he wants, directs us into providing whatever he wants, whether it's mud or mud in a bowl or clay or paints or color pencils, whatever it be. But what I like is the eye that he sees things with. And because I'm not in his brain and I can't see with his eye, I see what he does. And from seeing what he does, what he draws, what he paints, what he makes, I feel that I can get this eye, which is like seeing.
Well, the theme for me for this work is about marriage, and the two figures are like my mother and father, and it was created around a time when I actually went to a wedding, the first wedding I'd been to, of some friends of ours, and I remember the bride in particular was walked through this archway, which I think I've kind of replicated in this work with the brush strokes that curl over the top of my mum. The red colours used in this work for me kind of symbolise love or a friendship or a relationship, and I don't know if I was aware of that at the time, but to me, as an adult, it even stands out. So perhaps I was that red clearly symbolises love, or and for me, there's also kind of a distinction between the woman and the man. The fact that I've got my dad in a brown kind of brown clothing, and my mum's in with red stockings maybe, and a blue top. Maybe that was something to do when you're a child, you associate certain colours with men and women.
Children have seen something coming together for a couple of weeks, people arriving that they don't know. They're aware that there's a big organisation that has put this together, and they're aware that it's about children's art. So this is giving them, I think, a sense that their own art is not an ephemeral thing, that it has some important value, an enduring value.
Within a gallery context, we often have difficulty in the children's gallery getting works framed, because within the gallery context, framing something equals a work of art, and there is an attitude in many museums that children's art is not real art, and so there is a real dilemma there. But personally, I think it helps validate the fact that this is important and that it is considered worthy of keeping and storing.
I think art is very nice because it's part of your life, I think, because you can do art whenever you start from a baby doing art. You can draw, and if it comes out bad, you can keep it, because you'll say, oh, I wish I'd keep that, because you will know that you actually did that, and you know when you did that. It's kind of like a reminder.
It's a moving thing. It's always eventually just a simple moving thing, and tinged always for me, mostly for me, with a certain sadness or quite frequently with the sadness. And I can't quite interpret that sadness. Perhaps there is some memory, of the sense of childhood in every child's drawing. And I think this is a very vital and important thing, to just keep coming back to how we feel as we stand before them. Apart from all that important interpretation and all that documentation and all that understanding and childhood development, which is so valuable, there is still this beautiful moment as we look at a child's drawing. And they're all different, and we're all different. But eventually, or very soon, there is one which seems to just stop us, and we cannot say why. But I suspect there's something lost, some memory, some beautiful thing. It's a sense of beauty there.
I think art is very precious and